I've made it a bit of a trend to talk about the history and mythology that inspired anime, and recently, Yasuke dropped on Netflix. And let me tell you, if you thought I'd missed the opportunity to talk about the first Black Samurai, then you're probably out of your mind. So, today I'll be telling you all the true history behind Netflix's anime, The Real Story of Yasuke. This is all separate of the anime itself, but if you would like me to go through the show as well and discuss it through the lens of a historian, I can definitely do that. And hey, if you enjoy these looks into history through anime, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. If you want to support the channel a little bit extra to ensure that I can keep videos like these coming your way, you can also check out the links down in the description for my Twitter and my Patreon. But with all of the YouTube stuff out of the way, let's talk about Yasuke. Now, most of the information we have on Yasuke comes from a book entitled Histoire ecclésiastique des le Royaume du Japon, which was written by François Solier in 1627. And yes, I know my pronunciation was awful there, but we're gonna have to go with it. Now that said, it was written a decent amount of time after the events within, and generally sources aren't readily available for it, so you have to take what's in it with a grain of salt. But let's start at the beginning. Yasuke's country of origin is not entirely certain, however it is most widely believed that his origin is Portuguese Mozambique. This is in line with a few other sources as well as Solier's accounts though, as the first African people to come to Japan were from Mozambique, and they would have arrived in 1546 under Captain George Alvarez, most of whom were slaves. This also connects to the name Yasuke, which is identifiably not very Mozambican, however he may have been from the Yao region. Now add into that Suke, which is a common male suffix in Japan, and you might get Yaosuke, which Yasuke might have been derived from. There are plenty of other theories as to his origins, including Ethiopia and South Sudan, these being suggested due to their relationships with Portugal, as well as things like religious beliefs, having skilled warriors, and having men who just typically have larger builds. If he was from South Sudan, he likely would have been a Dinka, who was taken as a child, as adults tended to tattoo their faces. And of course there are no accounts which mention him having tattoos on his face. The Dinka were also known for having extremely dark features and for being very tall, both defining traits in Yasuke's stories. Many accounts even mentioning him being between 6'2" and 6'5", which is over a foot taller than the average Japanese man of the time. And an example I've seen being used to describe this is having an average person in the modern era standing next to Shaq. There is typically a pretty noticeable difference. But Yasuke's life certainly changed when he arrived in Japan in 1579. Originally, he was in the service of Alessandro Velignano, an Italian Jesuit who was on a mission throughout the Indies. In March of 1581, they would arrive in the Japanese capital of Kyoto, and as it turned out, the sight of a black person in Japan, let alone one who was Yasuke's size, drew in quite a crowd, with some accounts mentioning how people would get trampled to death, or how buildings would collapse under the weight of the crowds within them. There are also cases which mention that he would have to get onto a horse and have the horse walk through the crowds because there were so many people around that he would never get through them. He became such an interesting topic that he eventually drew the attention of Oda Nobunaga, one of the most important people in Japanese history and someone who is credited as one of the primary people involved in the unification of Japan. Upon actually meeting Yasuke, Nobunaga had him stripped so that he could have his skin scrubbed because he thought that a person had dyed their skin using black ink. Upon learning that Yasuke's skin was indeed black, he took an immediate interest in the man. This was even to the point where Nobunaga had his nephew give Yasuke some money during their first meeting because he was so impressed by his manners and strength. Luckily, Valignano wanted to ensure that his missionaries were as effective as possible, so he would teach them things like basic language and culture before arriving, definitely helping Yasuke to make a good impression. There are actually accounts of Nobunaga saying that he enjoyed talking to Yasuke and learning about his homeland. It would be only a short time after that Yasuke would fully begin working under Nobunaga, becoming the only non-Japanese retainer Nobunaga had in his employ, and certainly the only black one. He was also given his own home, as well as a short ceremonial katana, and granted the duty of weapon bearer. On top of all of this, he was often granted the honor of actually eating with Nobunaga, something that many of his other samurai never experienced. Yasuke would be involved in Nobunaga's forces through the Battle of Tenmokuzan, and afterwards he would meet another of Japan's great unifiers, Tokugawa Ieyasu. In 1582, Nobunaga would be attacked and forced to end his own life by Akechi Mitsuhide. Yasuke would go on to serve Nobunaga's son, Oda Nobutada, at Nijo Castle. They would both be captured, and Akechi's own racism would actually go on to spare Yasuke's life, as he claimed that Yasuke was an animal and not Japanese, thus he shouldn't have to commit seppuku. He was instead taken back to the Christian church in Kyoto, although very little is written of him after this. The Netflix anime has a very different depiction of history, so like I said, I would love to dive into that if you guys are interested in it. But for now though, I hope you enjoyed this look into the true history behind the first black samurai, Yasuke. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and if you did enjoy, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content in the future. But for now, I want to thank all the lovely people who are allowing my channel to keep running over on Patreon. With our Dai Yokai, Iffy Babes, Ikerochu, and Jacob Wiley, our yokai Amelia Hellman, Anel Cruz, Blood Wolfmon, Jamie Heck, Janice Not Janice, Lucifina Akuma, and Joker Rose, and our Hanyo Alexandra Gartside, Anthony Hogan, Eli Kanem, Kiwi Dog, Love the Kiwi, Michael Grayco, Nega Kitty, Randy Moseyman, Samantha Olsen, Savage Camel, and Suki Neko. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, remember to stay excellent.